Microphone. Now it is still echoing.
It's okay, sir. Now. Okay.
Now okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So,
Okay. So shall we start?
ha ha ha.
Okay. So,
Ha.
good noon, participants. Our next expert guest of today is Dr. Kaustubh Chaudhary. Sir has completed his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Jadavpur University, after which he joined IIT Kharagpur and completed his MTech and PhD in the thermal fluid specialization. Presently, Sir is a faculty in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Rourkela. Before joining academics, Dr. Chaudhary worked in Schlumberger, one of the leading oil and gas field upstream industry expertise in drilling rigs, where he worked as a modeling and simulation engineer in the area of fluid mechanics. The focus was the use of principles of fluid mechanics to resolve the challenges faced in the industry with the help of leading computational techniques. Examples include multi-phase flows, turbulent flows, mixed flow, flow through porous media, rotating flows, etc. He has worked on various projects towards new product development, sustaining ongoing tasks and supports technological and innovation projects. Some of his key contributions are published in industry's newsletters. One of his works was also selected for presentation in Schlumberger's Asia Level Reservoir Symposium 2017. Sir has published in various reputed journals such as Physical Review E, Langmuir, Lang on Chip, Journal of Applied Physics, International Journal of Heat and Mass Transfer, Industrial and Engineering Chemistry Research, Journal of Turbulence, etc. Sir is primarily endeavored in analytical and CFD based understanding in collaboration with astute experimental findings. His work finds relevance in both further enhancements in fundamental understanding as well as in the applied arena. That has been conferred by the Indian Institute of Mineral Engineers with the Best Paper Award on Benefication for the paper titled Swilling Flow Hydrodynamics in Hydrocyclones, published in Industrial and Engineering Chemistry Research. That has also been actively working as a reviewer for scientific reports of Nature Group, Nature Communications, and Physics of Fluids. Today, Sir is going to deliver his lecture on the topic fluidic materials. Welcome, Sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. And now it's good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Already afternoon.
Probably uh, all the participants here, you have been attending various discussions related to this novel materials, smart materials, uh, how to develop different types of materials, and possibly this topic, this session is maybe probably sort of some odd man out. Uh, so fluidic material. So I mean, in a discussion related to material, related to novel material, if somebody asks you that we had a discussion on fluid mechanics, then probably everybody can get taken aback. So let's take a pause, start blank. Let's just retrospect ourselves. Just retrospect ourselves. That where we began. So these are the pictures, as you can see, gives you the idea. These are collection from Bronze Age, Stone Ages, and Bronze Ages. Okay, so on the left hand side, these are mainly from Stone Ages collection, and on the right hand side, what you can see, the collection from Bronze Age. So this is where we began, and the concept of material began. So if we retrospect a little bit, then we'll see this we start with bronze, stone age, bronze age, and now in modern days we are in novel materials, smart material arena. So if we retrospect and ask ourselves some basic questions, that what is the purpose of these materials? the purpose still remains same, to serve your objective, to serve your purpose. Okay. So no matter whether you are in the Stone Age or in the Bronze Age or now in the present age, wherever you are, the purpose of a material is to serve our objective and serve our purpose, and it still remains the same. That key idea, the key concept brings us to my discussion related to fluidic material. So, myself, Kaustubh Chaudhary, Professor Devasmita Mishra has already introduced myself, Kaustubh Chaudhary. I am a faculty at the Department of Mechanical Engineering, NIT Rourkela. Presently, I am the faculty here. So that brings us to the discussion of fluidic material. So when we think of fluid, we know that we when we talk about fluid, our basic or the intuitive concept, intuitive idea brings us to think that okay, we know we have solid, gas, and liquid. So gas and liquids are fluid. So probably we may talk about this difference and how. And when we talk about fluid, that means basically liquid and gas. And within this fluid, we have Newtonian, non-Newtonian fluid, different types of fluids. So this is the common intuition that drives us to think in this direction. But today, uh, what I suggest that let us not go into that arena. Let us think from a different perspective. Let us take the basic keyword that how our objective is to serve our purpose, to serve our objective with the help of a material. So let us think in a way that whether the question is whether fluid mechanics can provide us this clue. Instead of the fluid itself as a material, whether fluid mechanics can give us this clue. Okay, so that is the main topic of today's discussion. Okay. So in this, the slides are visible, I guess. So, so in this walk, we will walk through different examples where we will see it is not the fluid, rather the fluid mechanics, which can give you some interesting concept, interesting idea, which can help to serve your purpose. And it is no less than a novel material, a smart material, whatever you want to do. So let's, I mean, this is a very vast arena. This is a very vast area and it is still developing. But here we'll take up some examples. Here we'll take up some examples and discuss some key aspects which will give you the idea that if you can play with fluid mechanics principle, you can have several ideas, several concepts, which is no less than a novel material or smart material as you want to put it. Okay, so okay. The first example we take is related to paper. Okay. In the left hand side, this image, what you can see, this is an ancient Indian scripture. Possibly this is Gita Govindam. So, paper, or at ancient days, people tried to thought of it as papyrus, something from papyrus. So this paper was used to transfer knowledge. How? By writing on paper and preserving the writing. Now, if you see, come to the modern day, on the right hand side, if you come to the modern days, now paper finds a tremendous technological applications. It is, of course, the very purpose of writing is still there. Although we are moving towards digital era and our writing habits gets changed to write in a digital form, but still writing and printing on paper still remain the same for transferring knowledge. In addition to that, nowadays we think of paper for transferring technology as well. Now you can find paper strips are used for various medical purpose, various testing purpose. And not only that, the utility of paper can be extended in various ways. We'll see some examples that how this utility varies. Now, when we thought of this transformation of technology, so this is a transformation of paper material from one century to another century, uh, one century to another century. So if you look into this basic concept, what you find that it is basically transport through topographically complicated fibrous networks. So paper, if you have a microscopic view of paper, you can see it consists of several fibers. So in between those fibers, you have pores. So when you put some fluid, for example, if you are writing with ink, so you are putting some fluid on the fibrous network, and this fluid flows through this network. If you place some water or any liquid on this paper, it spreads. It spreads through those pores, those gaps. Okay, so it is basically transport through the topographically complicated fibrous networks. Now, if you take one such channel or pore as a model, let us take one such channel as a model, pore as a model or a basic thing. So you can see it is nothing but a simple flow of fluid through a microcapillary. My capillary is basically a tube, so tube-like shape. Microcapillary means its size is very small, of the order of micron size. So size means diameter. When I say size, that means size of the channel means the diameter of the channel. The length can be large or small, but the diameter is very small. So if you take up one simple, if you take up one pore or one channel, you will find that it is nothing but a simple flow through a simple capillary. Now, for this type of capillary flow, we have some fundamental principles to model this flow dynamics. Okay, now you can for a single network, but now if you then once this model is complete, now you have to think that you have to transfer this single capillary to the fibrous network capillary model. Okay, so if you transfer this single capillary dynamics or map this single capillary dynamics to these fibrous networks, you will find an interesting behavior. An interesting behavior. Will not get into the detailed mathematical analysis for this. You can refer the papers mentioned here. So basically, the concept when we started this idea, we first model this single capillary flow, and then we thought that let us consider the distribution of fiber as random network. Distribution of fibers as a random network. Now, so there is a concept called random walk model. Random walk model. So this random walk model gives you the clue that if you can model a single phenomena and then how you can map it to a random distribution into a random network. So we adopted this idea from there and try to map the single capillary flow into the random distribution of fibrous networks. What we eventually obtain is very interesting, that is the effective diffusive transport behavior on paper. Now that sounds little bit from material point of view. We found that this transport phenomena eventually offers you and effective diffusivity. Effective diffusivity and effective time scale, and diffusion width, I'll come to that. So effective diffusivity and an effective time scale. Okay, so what you see as a collection of random networks, complicated motion of fluids through different direction, different areas, it is nothing but an effective diffusion process. And what is this effective diffusivity or effective diffusion? That you can obtain by mapping the single capillary dynamics to the random network dynamics, by mapping these dynamics. So once we did, if you do that, you will find that several phenomena you can explain pretty well with a simple single concept of diffusion. Okay, so that's what here on the left hand side, the picture that you can see, in the left hand side picture, you can see that here there were some experiments which conducted a study that if I place some water in a paper or some solution in a paper, our common experience says that it spreads. So how much it spreads with time? Okay, so these were the previous experiments done, several experiments done. So if you use this simple concept, if you use this simple analysis, simple concept of diffusion based analysis, you will find that all these phenomena of spreading can be pretty well explained. So what we eventually obtain? We eventually obtain that the combination of fluid and the paper, if we can think of them as a combined package of diffusivity, combined package of diffusion, then you can play with those ideas as you wish. And of course, definitely it is no less than a smart material or novel material. For example, here in the middle picture, you can see these are some experiments performed by Kaur et al. They analyzed the diffusion, spreading of two types of fluids, and they found some diffusion of one species towards another area. So the thickness is the width of diffusion width. And with the help of this simple diffusion based concept, you can pretty well explain this behavior. Now you can think that where we can use this concept. For example, in one side you place one chemical, in another side you place another chemical, and you let them spread and react in between. And in fact, these are the concepts people are not trying to use to have chemical reactions and some medical diagnosis device. And in fact, people also tried to separate plasma and blood corpuscles, blood plasma and blood corpuscle, using this simple principle of diffusion. Okay, on the right hand side, this is a very interesting case. If you see that this is actually the model of writing. So there was some experiment by Kim et al. They conducted some experiment that how we write, or when we write, what happens actually. So what happens, if you have a pen and if you write if the pen moves with a speed, what happens, the liquid spreads parabolically with a defined shape. So this is an exaggerated view, not to scale, but roughly the profile, if you see, it's parabolic. But the question baffles us that why it should be parabolic. Okay, this writing profile, why it should be parabolic? So the answer lies here. The diffusion phenomena, if you come to the diffusion based concept, you can pretty well explain this parabolic variation. Okay, so again, what is the message we got from this understanding of study? That it is not the fluid exactly, it is not the paper exactly, but the interplay between these two materials, or to be very specific, the inherent fluid mechanics, that provides us a key that if we understand this fluid mechanics principle, and if we can use this fluid mechanics principle judicially, we can, I mean, create wonders with it, and it is no less than a novel material or smart material. Now let us take another example. I mean, here this is a long bubble inside narrow cylindrical capillaries. If you have a liquid and if you pass a gas bubble through a tube or channel, you can have a shape like this, a capsule type shape. Okay. Now, what is the interesting area? The interesting area is the gap. This gap between the bubble and the channel. This thin film gap. This thin liquid film gap. This is pretty interesting. Now, this problem was taken classically by Bretherton as a classical fluid mechanics problem, and while doing so, what he found that there is a governing equation you can find for this film thickness. That film thickness varies as a function of x. If you take this as the x, so how it varies? It varies like that. I mean, this equation is also not very critical or not very difficult to understand. This is a this equation you can get from the lubrication based analysis. This lubrication, I mean, in any textbook you can find this type of analysis, nothing so difficult. But here what you find, an interesting number, what is called the capillary number, viscosity. This is the liquid viscosity into u is the speed of the bubble, and sigma is the surface tension at the interface of air and bubble, or gas and bubble, whatever you consider. So sorry. So this is the governing equation, and these are the boundary conditions. So boundary conditions basically say that if you go back, you should match with a constant film thickness H0, and if you again go back, the gradients are 0. But if you move forward, the film thickness should correspond with the radius, bubble radius or channel radius. Okay, it should correspond with the channel radius. Okay, so accordingly, the curvature of the film or the radius of curvature should correspond with the channel radius of curvature. Now, what Bretherton did, or in fact, if you solve this equation, you can solve this equation numerically, and you will find that this film thickness H0 varies as capillary number to the power 2/3. This is just a factor. So capillary number to the power 2/3, and this is the famous contribution by Bretherton, which is the 2/3 law. Okay. Now, why I'm discussing this little bit mathematics, because here lies a key aspect. Here lies a key aspect. So, if you critically analyze this model, you will find that this 2/3 law, of course, you can obtain by numerical solution or analytical, sophisticated analytical solution or sophisticated numerical solutions in detail. But without going into this solution, if you look into this problem and do some simple scaling analysis, length scale based analysis, you will find that these type of variables or parameter you can define using scales. So this is called the scaling of the parameter. So basically this eta gives you the scaling of x coordinate, and this f of eta gives you the scaling of this film thickness h parameter. Now if you scale them, you can see that with the help of this scaling itself, you can obtain this 2/3 law even without going into the solution. So basically, so the concept is here, what happens if you see that the scales are not fixed scales. See, we often tend to think about scales in terms of some constant scales. With the help of those scales, we non-dimensionalize different parameters and we obtain different non-dimensional parameters. But here the scales are not that fixed scale, rather these are dynamic scales and changes with the speed of the bubble speed. Okay, now this dynamic scale actually is the clue. Okay, this dynamic scaling is the clue. which gives us the two-thirds law. Okay, so this is the classical concept, conventional concept so far known. But what you can find here is interesting factor. This if we take up some experimental observation, we'll find that this two-thirds scaling law can explain the behavior up to certain capillary number or up to certain bubble speed. But if you keep on lowering the speed according to this two-thirds law, your bubble should come in contact with the channel, but it does not happen. It does not happen. What happens actually, after below a certain capillary number or bubble speed, the bubble attains an almost constant fixed film thickness. Now the question is why? What is happening there? What is making it static? So in order to understand that, what we did, we introduced some molecular scale effect in terms of disjoining pressure, in terms of surface charge. Okay, in the form of surface charge and disjoining pressure, and we found that the classical two-thirds power law actually breaks down in this lower limit of capillary number, or in the low capillary number regime. Rather, a new length scale appears. This new length scale appears. This length scale is again a combination of capillary number and some physics driven intrinsic length scale. Here in this physics driven intrinsic length scale, we'll find uh, molecular length scale, or this length scale related to surface charges. And if you instead of this classical convention, if you use those scales, then you can find that this model can explain the low capillary number behavior pretty well. And if your model is correct, if your concept is correct, and if you have correctly model or scale the phenomena, then your scale should be able to switch when the capillary number is high. So it is basically the switching of length scale, switching of this and with the help of this switching of dynamic length scale, you can see, you can pretty well explain, you can pretty well understand the behavior, bubble, this film thickness behavior. Okay, so now after discussing all these long bubble, thin films, breakdown of this two-thirds power law, capillary length scale, so many things, the next question is, so what? Okay, we understood so many things, mathematical things, but the question is, so what? So what? To answer this, so what? Uh, Recently, people started realizing the importance of this narrow thin film inside the bubble, and now they think of this narrow thin film as a nano channel. So this is one example from a recent publication where they use this concept of low, at the low capillary number, the film thickness you have, this film region itself acts as a nano channel. So the nano channel is not the entire channel with nanometer size diameter. Here the channel can be large, but the bubble, the thickness, the thin film in between this bubble and channel wall, this acts as the nano channel. And this nano channel uh, is driven by these physics driven and dynamics driven intrinsic length scale. So in the right hand side, what you can see is an exemplary application of this nano channel. So this is example of ion concentration polarization. So you can see the left, in the left hand side, they use ion concentration in two sides. In the left hand side, they introduce current. In the picture you can see they introduce, and with the passage of current, you find that there is a separation of concentration, ion concentration. Previously, the separation of this ion concentration was only taking place inside a nano channel. That means if you work with a carbon nanotube or something like that, you can have this type of separation. But they have demonstrated pretty well that if you tune this thin film dynamics, if you understand, if you tune this thin film dynamics, you can have a nano channel which serves the same purpose, this ion concentration polarization. So again, it is the underlying fluid mechanics. It is the underlying fluid mechanics that gives us the idea, that gives us the clue. It is not the bubble, not the air, not the fluid, not the channel. It is the fluid mechanics, the interplay of fluid mechanics. And of course, I mean, it is providing us the idea and clue that we can serve our purpose with the help of this fluid mechanics principle. That is why we start with the question that instead of thinking of fluid as a material, let's think fluid mechanics to serve our purpose. Let's ask fluid mechanics to solve our problems. Okay. Now, in this example, we'll talk about droplet dynamics. I mean, droplets and bubbles, it may sound similar, but one is air or gas field, another one is liquid field. So here we'll talk about droplet dynamics. See, see these droplets. These are very interesting and a pretty interesting entity, as you can say. Okay, these are pretty interesting entities, and if you can play with these droplets, you can have several interesting phenomena. So on the left hand side picture, you can see what what was targeted. There is a droplet, and the droplet is placed inside a spherical container. It's a confined spherical container, a liquid droplet placed inside a spherical container, and the container is also filled with a liquid. So the inner fluid is denoted by subscript 1 and the outer fluid denoted by subscript 2. Now in this system, let us apply some electric field. So you can have a spherical container filled with liquid or any fluid, and inside this fluid you put another droplet, and now you apply an electric field. As simple as that. And let's see what happens here. In the right hand side picture, what you can see, it's a droplet placed inside a channel. Okay, little bit offset from the center line, not exactly at the center line, but little bit offset. And now you introduce some oscillatory flow. You introduce some flow and oscillatory flow. Now both these systems can provide you some interesting ideas and interesting concepts, where you can see that fluid mechanics can help to serve your purpose. So let us first consider this electrohydrodynamics part. Here you can find these are the ratio or parameters. Here D is defined as the deformation parameter, LP minus LN. So it is basically, if you have a droplet and if it deforms, we model this as an ellipsoidal shape, and LP and LN are the principal axis of those ellipsoidal shape, where LP is oriented parallel to the direction of electric field and LN normal to the direction of electric field. The deformation parameter, deformation is unlimited. So now let us introduce the electric field and see what happens. So this is what happens. Again, we will not go into the detailed mathematics. So this is what happens. So here alpha is the confinement ratio. So alpha, if you see, RD by RB, so droplet radius divided by the confinement radius. So here alpha 0 is basically the unconfined case. So you can see here that inside the droplet, if you have an unconfined droplet and field is suspending, and if you apply some electric field, what you see, the arrangement of those streamlines, and as time progresses, after some time you will find the closed streamlines here, the closed streamlines patterns. Okay, now if you keep on increasing the confinement, that means making the droplet bigger and bigger. So this is the confined case. If you keep on making this blue line, you can follow the droplet. And if you keep on placing bigger and bigger droplet and you move downwards, you will see that you will see some interesting flow patterns. Now, why I'm every time why I'm calling those interesting? These streamline patterns gives you a clue. You know, uh, when we want to mix something, we need some circulation. We often use some circulation. For example, if you have a tea you have a cup of tea. In this cup of tea, you pour some sugar or some milk, and then what you do? You create a circulation. Okay, it's not exactly the circulation that does the purpose, but circulation is helpful to create the mixing. So you can see that in the confined environment you can create several interesting circulation patterns, and these circulation patterns can help you to mix the material inside. For example, nowadays if we often think of different medical medicines and several things, where so using this concept you can pretty well mix them electrically. By electrical charging you can pretty well mix them using this simple concept. Okay, so here again the fluid mechanics comes into play. The fluid mechanics offers you the clue. It is the question to you that how you are going to utilize it from unconfined domain to confined domain. Okay, with the different level of confinement you can have different types of streamline splitting, streamline patterns, different types of streamline arrangements, and these streamline arrangements can help you mix the fluid in between. So you can, again, you can play with this fluid mechanics principle. You can use this fluid mechanics principle to serve your purpose of mixing. Now here in the right hand side, what is another thought, it is given that suppose you have this droplet inside a liquid, a droplet placed in a liquid inside a container. This entire system acts as liquid and a fluid system. Okay, now the question is, what is the equivalent viscosity of this, or viscosity contrast of this equivalent viscosity of this system? Okay, so the question is, when we say equivalent viscosity, that means we want to compare with something. So what we compare there is that if you have a bounded case and if you have an unbounded case, and in this case if you want to have same deformation, then what would be the viscosity you require for this unconfined case? What would be the viscosity you require for this unconfined case? And that gives us the equivalent viscosity. So this is the matching condition. You can see that if you want to have same deformation pattern, see, one thing you can see that the streamline patterns, these are basically governed by the deformation of the droplet deformation pattern is very important. Deformation behavior is very important, which is driving this main streamline pattern. So we ask ourselves that if we keep the deformation same for confined and unconfined, so in the unconfined case, what we need to have? We found that we need to have a system with very high viscosity. You can see that in the when alpha tends to 1, the viscosity contrast, you can see, is very, very high. So that means in an inside system, you have something which provides you an effect of, how should I put it? You get a high viscosity effect actually. Okay, so again here the fluid mechanics comes into your help. offers you a clue that if you want something with the high viscosity effect, how you can play this high viscosity effect, you can create with a confinement effect. Okay, so this gives us the idea that this confined and unconfined case, if we make it confined, we can create, not only create an interesting, streamlined patterns as you wish, we can create something with high viscosity effect. When you need in application, if you need the high viscosity effect, you can play with those things. So simply you need to know the interplay of, so again it is not just the droplet or the fluid outside the droplet, not the confinement alone, it is the combination, and they are not the neither the electric field alone, it is rather the combination and the interplay, the fluid mechanics that offers you a help, that how you can play with those fluid mechanics principle and this behavior, so that you can get the some useful applications. Now let us take the second example of droplet dynamics. So in this second example of this droplet dynamics, what you see that we have a droplet placed inside a channel and we introduce some oscillatory flow. Now this behavior is modeled using coupled Cahn-Hilliard-Navier-Stokes equation, CHNS, coupled Cahn-Hilliard-Navier-Stokes equation, CHNS. So, sorry, just so if you wonder what is the Cahn-Hilliard equation, is basically it's a multi-phase flow model. Okay, where we have a parameter phi. Phi varies from -1 to +1. So -1 denotes one phase and +1 denotes another phase, and in between it varies smoothly. Okay, so the smooth variation, because of this smooth variation, this model is also known as the diffuse interface model. So with the help of this phi parameter, what we usually do, we first define an energy of the system, and then we minimize this energy, and also we introduce the mass conservation principle. And if you use this concept, what you finally obtain is a coupled Cahn-Hilliard-Navier-Stokes model. Okay, so with the help of this model, when you uh, okay, so or you can do experiment whatever you want, but here this study was performed using this simulation. So the CFD analysis, CFD simulation. So here, so what happens here actually? Let's see again. You see the connection. So previously, the streamlines were created using electric field. Now here it is created using flow. I mean the background flow, what we call is the background flow. Here you can see these streamlines denotes the flow field with respect to the droplet reference frame. Again, it is with respect to the droplet reference frame. That means what the droplet sees? The droplet sees some circulations around itself, not only inside but also outside. You can see not only inside but also outside. So now here this picture is shown for a steady flow, no oscillation. Okay, for a steady flow we have a fixed droplet center, and with the help of that you can pretty well explain the circulation pattern. Okay, now here also you see one can appreciate that previously the circulation was created using electric field. Now you can see you can have the same effect using the background flow, or rather I should say similar effect using a background flow. Okay, so how they are connected, that means in one case it was due to electric field and here it was due to background flow. So how they are connected, these are completely different things. They are connected by a simple, there is a simple connection, single connection and simple connection, that is the deformation. So it is neither the electric field nor the background flow which is playing the main role. The main role is played by droplet deformation. Now it's up to you that how you create this deformation, how you create or generate this deformation, and how the deformation looks like. Okay, so here in the steady flow. Now imagine the situation in case of an oscillatory flow. What happens if you introduce an oscillatory flow? So here in the left hand side, you can see if you have a plain Poiseuille flow, the after some distance xd, the droplet distance, the position is more or less fixed. But in case of an oscillatory flow, you can have oscillatory droplet location. So again, if I this is the case with different Strouhal numbers. Strouhal number is basically a non-dimensional number which gives you higher Strouhal number means higher oscillation, low Strouhal number means low oscillation frequency. So if we again go back here, you imagine this scenario with oscillating location of the droplet. So basically, with the oscillating location of the droplet, what you see, the droplet deformation gets the droplet deformation oscillates. So the streamlines, pattern, distribution, they also oscillates in tune with the deformation. Okay, this gives you the clue, the idea that if you know the fundamentals, if you know the basic mechanics, the fluid mechanics, here the basic fluid mechanics or the basic fluid mechanics principle is the deformation of the droplet. Now you have to play with this deformation. How you can do this, how you can perform this deformation? Electric field is an option. You can have a flow, background flow. You can oscillate the background flow. You can have any pattern of background flow. Now with different background flow pattern, you can have different deformation parameters, and with different deformation parameters, you can have different streamline patterns, and those streamline patterns you can use for your to serve your purpose. Okay. Now in the right hand side figure, this is not exactly related to this use of the fluid mechanics principle, but it is somehow related. I will not go into this complete details of this analysis, theoretical analysis. Rather, I would like to highlight. I was very much tempted to highlight this fundamental principle that is very interesting. There is a concept called reciprocal identity. In fluid mechanics, there is a concept called reciprocal identity. So in reciprocal identity, what we usually do, that if you want to understand some phenomena, okay, for example, here we want to understand the phenomena of a droplet in an oscillating flow. So what we do, we first understand the phenomena of a simple problem, which you might capture analytically also. So what is the simple phenomena we observe, we analyze? We analyze a droplet in a spherical droplet, more or less spherical droplet, low deformation, which is moving steadily in a in a flow. Okay. Now, uh, now just by some mathematical identity, just by some simple mathematical manipulation, you can pretty well connect these two problems. Okay, this is the reciprocal identity. This is the, in a nutshell, in a very simplified, in a very simple manner, this is in a nutshell is the reciprocal identity. So just to give you this concept, this reciprocal identity, it's a very powerful identity. You can solve the problem, or you can understand the problem of simple problem, and then you can map these two problems together, simple and these complex problems together. Okay, by some mathematical tricks, mathematical calculation, mathematical identities. And if you use this concept, you can pretty well explain even those complex phenomena. So here we try to explain those solid lines. You can see these are the theoretical estimations. I try to explain, so just to give you the idea. So again, in a nutshell, from the droplet dynamics, what we have seen, what we have understood, that it is the droplet deformation that is playing a very critical role, and that is playing a very important and interesting role. So now it's up to you that how you can create or generate this deformation. If you generate this deformation in different way or using different fluid mechanics principle or in fact some other principle. For example, here we have shown example, in the previous example we have seen the deforming by electric field. Why not deforming by magnetic field? Why not deforming by sound also? Why not by light? In fact, those examples what I'm giving, for example, playing with or fluid mechanics with magnetic fluid mechanics with sound is also now people are studying. This is known as the optofluidics. Hey, sorry, acoustofluidics. Acoustofluidics, and people are also trying to use play fluid mechanics with light. Uh, so this is known as the acoustofluidics. This optofluidics, sorry, optofluidics. So this acoustofluidics, optofluidics, these are the principles with which you can play with the bubble shape or bubble deformation, and with the bubble deformation or bubble shape, you can have the fluid mechanics to serve your purpose. Okay. Now, this is another problem where we have started with we now simply move on to some complex flow phenomena. This is our recent attempt to understand the another arena of fluid mechanics, which is basically the turbulent flow analysis. So these pictures, what you can see, this is actually a method of defining. So we know that when we have a turbulent flow, we have a vigorous motion, and these vigorous motions are defined in terms of eddies. Now, classically, or people thought that eddying motion, or this eddies motion with eddies circulation, this vigorous motion, can we describe those phenomena in terms of some vortex structure? In terms of some vortex structures. Okay, so this is the way people want to analyze the vortex structures in a flow field. So this is a plane where, so we will come to that, what we exactly mean. I will not go into that detail, but essentially this omega represent the swirling strength, and this sigma, this is actually the denotes the stretching of the swirling region. I mean, how the swirling motion is perceived. The basic of the swirling motion is perceived in a way that if you consider a spiral, okay, the rotation speed along the spiral you can think as the swirling strength, and the extent, axial extent of the stretching, or axial and also the outward stretching of this spiral as the is governed by this sigma. So what we have what we found that if suppose you have a flow field, now in this flow field you collect the information of this swirling strength and this sigma, omega and sigma value from every point in the flow field. Now you take up those points, and after that you have to do some little bit mathematical analysis. And also this is not a very difficult mathematical analysis, it is just some statistical analysis actually, okay, using the probability density. Now if you do this statistical analysis, you can understand very interesting uh, vortex structures. So this picture gives us the idea that in this surface, we take up a simple case. What is the case? We have a fluid with the bottom layer heating and the top layer cooling. So you know this gives you the what is classically known as the Rayleigh-Bénard convection. So here fluid goes up, the hot fluid goes up and the cold fluid comes down, it gives you a circulation. Okay. Now, what you do, on top of that, you introduce some rotation. Now introduce some rotation. What you find that the spiraling type of motion. Okay. And now if you collect the data of this omega and sigma on this plane, Okay, omega and sigma on this plane, and you do this statistical analysis, and from the statistical, so this is actually giving the joint probability density function. And if you focus on the high concentration of these JPDFs, and you try to see the vortex, the corresponding vortex structure, you can find interesting cyclonic and anticyclonic structures. Okay, so with the help of these structures, so instead of having a very complicated, complex, vigorous motion, turbulent flow, you can find the key flow structures. And in fact, people try to use this concept to understand the phenomena of cyclones, what is happening naturally, cyclones and tornado. But what would be the structure? What is the structure of cyclones and tornado? Okay, so that's what people try to understand. So again, here the simple fluid mechanics principle, that if you collect the information and if you play with those concepts, you can pretty well extract these simple vortex structures. Okay, now this is the application of this concept, that how to extract the vortex structure and what we can get. Okay, now here also this is another canonical problem. This is a flow through a channel, a turbulent flow. So in this channel also we try to apply those concepts and try to extract the vortex structures over there. So these vortex structures, you can find these elongated vortex structures over there, uh, which gives us this what is called there are different types of wall induced turbulence structures we can extract. But the major application, what we found or what we try to understand now, is that okay, we are able to extract the vortex structure. We are able to extract the vortex structure. Now, so what? So this example you can see, this is actually a cylindrical cyclonic separator. So at the bottom you can see an opening, and at the top also there is another opening. So the fluid basically a mixture of fluid enters through cyclonic separator, it rotates and comes out. And during this rotation, you can have mixing, you can have separation. Okay, so mixing and separation you can have. Now the question is, what is causing the mixing in the circulation? What is causing the mixing? This mixing is caused by those inherent vortex structures. So here we try to understand or analyze the uh, inherent vortex structures. Okay, and we find that that I mean here this high value of the swirling strain, actually in this region, if you collect data from this region to construct these vortex structures, you will find a high rigid rotation. So you can find these are the domains which gives you the more or less rigid type of rotation. And in these rigid rotations, basically what you can have, you have trapping of particle rather than mixing. Okay, so if you want mixing, we need what is known as the strained rotation, rotation with strain, also straining in the system. So the your system should operate most likely in this regime, in this arena. So now in this study we try to understand the vortex structures, where we have the rigid rotation, where we have the strained rotation, or rotation dominated, I mean less strain and more strain. Now next we'll try to use this concept to understand or play with this concept to create different vortex structures, so that we can have mixing, we can have separation also. Okay, if you want to trap the particle, what we want to, what type of vortex structure we have to play with. If you want to mix the fluids, then what type of vortex structure we need to play with. So again, you can see that the simple fluid mechanics principle that provides you a basic clue. Okay, see, so it can provide us very useful applications. Now, probably this is the last example we'll take, blood droplets and plasma protein. So here in this example, let's just see this video. I think this video is visible. On the left hand side, the video you can see what we tried. We take a simple drop of blood and allow it to fall. Okay. Now you see two different types of case. Now, again, let me play this video. So on the left hand side, you can see the neck is collapsing incessantly, continuously. But on the right hand side, what you see, it's a sort of elastic type stretching, right? If you work with, we know that the blood is a non-Newtonian fluid. Okay, if you work with any other non-Newtonian fluid, you should have only one mode of breakup. Either it's this continuous collapsing or elastic type stretching and then a breakup. But in case of blood, what you can see in the right hand side, we have different mechanism of breakup. So in this graph, you can see mode 1 and mode 2. Mode 1 is continuous collapsing and mode 2 is elastic stretching. So we have different types of behavior. So why this is so? Actually, if we look at the constituents of blood, we have the plasma and then we have corpuscles. So major corpuscle is the red blood corpuscle, and the volume concentration of those corpuscle or RBC, red blood corpuscle, this is known as the hematocrit concentration. Now, depending on different hematocrit condition concentration, what you have uh, different types of non-Newtonian behavior. Okay, but here these experiments were actually performed with blood. So blood in reality has what I should say, really unpredictable behavior. Okay, really unpredictable behavior. But we found that we cannot say for sure that which hematocrit concentration provides this behavior, this continuous collapsing, which hematocrit concentration gives you this elastic behavior. It's completely unpredictable. What it means that, but whatever may be the unpredictability, the modes are like that. And on finding the answer to this question, what we found that it is nothing but the arrangement of these plasma proteins and corpuscles in this neck region, the keel neck region. Okay, or discharge of plasma proteins and corpuscles from the keel neck region, and that plays the critical role. And if you so using this concept, we tried to model this breakup behavior, and we found very interesting scaling behavior. For the continuous breakup, we find one type of uh, breaking mode we are able to explain with the model, and for the second mode also we are able to model the elastic behavior. But still, we are searching that. Despite this unpredictability, that when the blood will behave like that, still we are able to come up with these two predictable nature. But we need, again we need more predictability, so that we can pretty well say that when it will behave like this continuous collapsing, or when it behaves like an extensional mode. But whatever be the case, it can have a very interesting behavior. So this fluid mechanics principle, again, it is the simple fluid mechanics principle, and the underlying particle or constituents which is constituting which constitutes the blood, that plays the important role. And if we can understand their role, their distribution very well, we can use these concepts, these principles for blood test. Okay, specifically where if we have a very small amount of blood for testing, we can think of creating a simple blood test model using this setup. Okay, so again, it's already time. So let me conclude here that again, if we retrospect the concept of material, The material, the basic purpose of material, whether it's a smart material, novel material, or not so novel material, the purpose of the material is to serve our purpose or to help us to achieve our objective. Now, with the help of fluid mechanics principle, you can you can serve your purpose, you can achieve your objectives. So that's what I'd like to I tried to highlight in this area, in this talk. And I'm sure, I mean, I don't know, I mean, how much it's I mean, how much I've been able to cover or explain to you pretty well. So even if you find it's not so good, so please excuse me. I'm not very much expert in this. I'm still learning these theories and concepts. Okay, okay. So thank you very much. Now I hand over to Devasmita, Professor Devasmita.
Thank you so much, sir, for the beautiful presentation. I also learned a lot because I have not thought being a being a thermal specialization. Also, I have not thought fluid mechanics in that way. Somewhat like particularly uh, you told about diffusion model in paper and all that. So we have
Hmm.
not thought of that area actually.
Hmm, hmm,
Don't
hmm.
think like that.
Yes.
The papers were really very good. Your papers are very good.
In fact, not only paper, in any fibrous network, you can try with this concept.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Any fibrous network. Hmm. Okay,
So
okay.
I have been actually working on the dielectric properties
Okay.
and also thermal and dielectric properties together.
That's
So
right.
of materials. So
Ah.
that is I have not thought in this manner that how moisture can affect and how the diffusion of fluid inside the materials will also
Hmm.
affect. Maybe
Yes.
I'll look into those things again
Yes.
in a
So
better.
basically, it is the entire combination, this fibrous material, the liquid, and how you are making the flow.
Yes, sir.
So this combination. Okay. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Anybody has? Any doubts or questions? We have. Okay, Bibu sir. We will provide you the lecture sessions. Don't worry. Any more questions? I don't think we have questions, sir. So we will round up here.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
sir,
you.
for enhancing our knowledge in the uh, areas of fluid mechanics and fluid materials, particularly. So thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you the organizers for the arranging this beautiful opportunity actually, and thanks to all the participants. And if anybody has any query, anything, you can also ask me, mail me anytime. I'll be happy to share my ideas and also happy to work with you as well. Anyway,
Sure, sir.
all of you.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
so much,
Thank you
sir.
very much.
Thank you, sir.